You peel your eyelids apart and you can't begin to guess what time it is. With effort, you roll over in bed and check your phone. It's early afternoon. It's also Friday. This is news to you because every day is just like the one before it. Thanks to quarantine. Not like you have a job to go to anymore. Damn virus. You're so bored. You have nothing to do. No money to spend, nowhere to go, and you're not allowed to see anyone. You wish something would happen. Every day feels just like the one before it. You're pretty sure it's July, but it might be August by now. Who the hell knows? You certainly know what year it is. The universe won't let you forget. You're awfully grumpy for first thing in the morning. Fair afternoon. You peek between the shades and are blinded by light. It's raining pretty hard, yet the sun is shining. What is that called anyway? You've heard people call that sunshine-rain combo by so many names, you're not sure what word to use. Waddling towards the kitchen, your new hobby. You decide to pour yourself a bowl of sugary cereal and realize you have no more milk. You eat it dry out of the box while you scroll through your phone. No need to dirty a bowl. After browsing for probably a lot longer than you should, maybe it's just as well you're out of milk. Your cereal would be a bowl of slop by now if you'd made it properly. You decide to check the weather. Mostly sunny, slight chance of rain. Blah, blah. You're sick of the rain too. It's been cloudy and sometimes raining for the last week or two, so the mosquito population is booming. The sun was sort of shining last you checked, so you guess the forecasted rain has come and gone. You scroll through your phone again. Same sites, nothing new to read or look at aside from the world ending. Every day you brace yourself for the newest way in which the apocalypse is happening. Between a killer virus, tragedies, civil unrest, political turmoil, murder hornets, and the ever-present catastrophe of climate change, you're vacillating between major freak-out mode and complete numbness. After catching up on today's atrocities, you notice that it's gotten rather dim in here, so you flip on the light. It's coming down hard now. Guess it's going to rain for real this time. A blast of lightning grabs your attention, and you look towards the window at the light show. It's more than a few choice lightning bolts, though. Constant crackling means no chance to count the miles. The rain seems to have stopped and given way to hail. You stop and listen for a while. It sounds like the hail is getting bigger. No longer a clattering like BBs, it's starting to sound like an automatic baseball pitcher on top speed. You're starting to worry about what this means for your already soggy lawn. You rise from your seat to peek your head out the door for a better look, and it appears that the hail has stopped. Everything has stopped but the lightning. You hear no birds, and there is no breeze. It's sweltering hot out here. The huge stones of hail have accumulated along the road and outside your home. Between the flashes of light, you spy that the sky is a bizarre color. What is that? Green? Oh boy. You continue staring, and even take a step off the threshold outside. It's so strange, you can barely look away. A distant siren wails, and above the vegetable green sky, the blackening clouds look like a wall. Maybe you should get inside. All the lights are off. Ugh, storm knocked out your power. Great. Things have picked back up again, and the wind is howling. You think about how cliche that sounds, but it really does sound like wolves. Wolves riding motorcycles, though. A thin line appears below the bottom of the black cloud, across the green-gray sky, and touches the horizon. The howling sound has turned into the clattering, whooshing, rushing, intense insistence of a freight train bearing down on you. You've seen a lot of movies, especially in these last few secluded months. So you have an idea what this weather is. Not good. Definitely not good. You're not sure where you could even take cover if you had to. The thin line is twisting like a worm on a hook, growing thicker and thicker. It no longer looks like a line, but an actual funnel, like God is pouring hell straight down from the sky. Chaos splashes up from the base of the funnel cloud. As you tear your eyes away from the window, looking for a place to shelter, a tree branch appears next to you, announcing itself with a deafening crunch. Splintered wood, glass, and your own stuff rains down on you. Unidentifiable debris rushes around the room, screaming past you and catching in the branches of the massive tree that stood in front of your home just seconds ago. You hear a sustained shrieking and aren't sure if it's your own voice or the wind. Arms thrown over your head to protect your neck, you scurry further into the house and duck into a closet that is somehow still standing. The shrieking continues as the air turns opaque with dust and debris. You're reminded of a horrific snow globe as you crouch down, hoping against hope that it's almost over. You feel your clothes and hair ripping away from your body. You feel splinters of wood, stones, objects, and whipping wind lashing your back. The furious screaming wind doesn't seem like a strong enough word, pummels your body. The closet doesn't seem to be providing much shelter, so you open your eyes to survey your surroundings. You were in your living room just a moment ago, and now you appear to be outside, surrounded by splinters of unidentifiable detritus. Wait, is that your laptop over there? And that must be what your refrigerator looks like from the back. Your dresser has overturned all your laundry and strewn it as far as you can see. You barely have time to register the chaos when you notice that your car that was parked on the street has turned on its side and is moving towards you. Everything is moving towards you. Run! You scream out loud to yourself. You can't hear your own voice. The wind is too strong for you to rise, and you're barricaded in the remains of the closet by your own overturned and demolished furniture. You hold your breath and wait to be crushed. But the car has been replaced on its 4 tires, albeit on top of a muddy pile of what used to be your front lawn. The wind has shifted away for the moment, and everything has stopped moving around you with such ferocity. The sky above is no longer green, but a swirling kaleidoscope of gray, black, and brown. The clouds seem impossibly close. You're exposed. You only see one choice. Grateful for your jingling habit of keeping your keys clipped to your belt loop, you run at a crouch towards your car, unable to fully stand in the wind and terrified of being struck with one of the massive house beams flying overhead. You scramble into the passenger seat and catch your breath. 3 of the windows are gone, and the windshield is a spider web of tempered glass. The wind howls, crashes, and screams in your covered ears. You know you should never try to outrun a tornado. You saw it flip your car back and forth with ease. But you also know that you can't stay exposed, and you would be if you had stayed crouched in the closet. You turn to look at the house you just crawled out of, but it's gone. A ruined smear stands in its place, only identifiable by the remains of the massive tree that crushed it. You are out of options. You turn the key in the ignition, and it miraculously starts first try. You stomp on the gas pedal with both feet, not even trying to look where you're going. Everything is leveled anyway. You're glad you bought the heavy-duty all-terrain vehicle, a luxury you never truly needed until today. You keep your eyes clenched tight so you don't have to look at the ruins that used to be your neighborhood. All around you, there is little to see but ruin, uprooted trees, isolated propane fires, and destruction. The fire hydrant that stood on the corner is missing. In its place is a gushing torrent of water, exacerbating the flood from the icy downpour this afternoon. You turn on your windshield wipers as fast as they can go, but it makes no difference. The water is pouring through the cracked glass anyway. The worst seems to have turned away from you, but the wind is still blowing sideways. Your visibility is down to almost nothing, yet you continue to drive as fast as your car will allow, praying you don't hit a tree, or that a tree doesn't hit you. You finally made it out of the worst of the damaged town, and as suddenly as it appeared, the tornado evaporates behind you. Relief washes over you. You unstick your feet from the gas pedal, bringing your car to a halt. You finally exhale. As the adrenaline leaves your body, you can feel your broken collarbone and assess your many injuries and lacerations. Your torn clothes are soaked in blood and mud. You notice aren't wearing any shoes. You must not have had time to put them on. Bits of wood and glass protrude from your skin everywhere you look. You haven't died, so you think you'll live if you can get to a hospital soon. Is the hospital still standing? You take a deep breath to prove to yourself that you're still alive. Just hours ago, you were lounging in your bed wishing for something to happen. An inappropriate laugh burbles out of your throat as the magnitude of loss finally hits you. You're having a hard time stopping the laughter despite the sobbing that overtakes you. Hyperventilating, filthy, bleeding and tear-soaked, it takes your brain a few seconds to understand what you're now seeing before you. Not far above the wreckage, fires, and flooding, you see the clouds retaking a now familiar funnel shape. Hysterical, you look out what used to be the window and think, not for the first time, just how wrong the weather forecast had been. The smell of stale peanuts and sawdust filtered through the air. Stepping through the barren bar, Hugh glanced over the overturned bar stools and blood-stained floors and knew from the dust covering the bar that this was the place. Sitting along a stretch of highway off the California coastline, the desert sun overlooked the Pacific Ocean on the way to Santa Barbara. Hugh grimaced as he nursed his wounded leg, fresh blood dripping down his leg and onto the floorboards. He slung his shotgun onto the bar and began foraging through the contents of the abandoned building. Finding an old bottle of whiskey and a bag of unopened pretzels, the wounded and defeated man settled into a booth in the back of the bar and sighed. "Hell of a last meal," Hugh muttered, laughing as he took a swig of the whiskey. Hugh Ames had come to terms with his fate. After surviving for weeks in the now desolate landscape of the United States, his luck had run out hours earlier. Before he could readjust the wrapping around his wounded leg, a sound of running feet drew his attention, and he aimed his sidearm at the front door had just entered from just as a young man ran inside. The man's face was covered in blood and dirt, much like Hugh's. The man held a rifle in his hands and was so scared that he had yet to notice Hugh, instead frantically slamming the doors of the bar closed and piling as much furniture against it as possible. "What's wrong, partner?" Hugh asked, startling the young man to swirl around and aim his rifle. "Easy now, son. If I'd wanted you dead, I would have shot you long before I spoke. I've had you dead to rights since you barged in here. Why don't you lower your rifle and tell me what's got you so spooked?" You lower your gun first," the kid stammered. His face was beaded with sweat and unshed tears. Hugh smiled, lowering his gun and setting it on the table in front of him. The young man relaxed, slowly lowering his gun and walking toward Hugh. "Which direction did you come from?" Hugh asked. "North. Been heading down here from San Francisco since the world went to hell. You?" "South. Up from LA. The damn horde has been on my ass since day one. Looks like we're surrounded, partner. What's your name?" "Ben. Ben Sanderson. Was a journalist up north at a conference when the horde arrived. I was a photographer in LA. Was at the epicenter of the first attack. I understand what you've been through, son. Believe me. Weeks earlier, a day like any other turned into chaos. The world watched as the United States was engulfed in a major attack. Creatures from beneath the surface emerged, attacking without remorse. They were incredibly fast, strong, and vicious. They had bodies like canines, but heads like snakes, and large wings that made their mobility that much more deadly. News reports around the world called the creatures the Horde. The efficient destruction of the U.S. was not due to some sort of immortality or invulnerability to weaponry. The creatures could die, and humans were fighting back. However, the sheer number of creatures that continued to pour out of the earth made it impossible to keep up. Within hours, the creatures had devastated major cities across the nation, and a week later, the government was left in tatters, as was most of the nation. Hugh had been on his way to a shoot at the La Brea tar pits when the first strike occurred. After a successful shoot with some upcoming social media star that had paid him a boatload of money for headshots, he had been feeling on top of the world. That feeling was replaced with dread quickly as the ground beneath them shook, and the world split open like the gates of Tartarus themselves, unleashing a horde of demons upon them. He watched in horror as the creature's snarling fangs and claws ripped into the flesh of those around him, blood spraying his face as he ran. The trauma of an event like that day is never what it appears to be in movies. The world didn't slow down around him. Instead, he was operating on pure instinct, the world around him flashing like the pulsating lights of a paparazzi-filled Hollywood premiere. Hours later, he had emerged from the city limits, drenched in blood and carrying a shotgun, had picked up from a police officer who had fallen prey to the creatures. Ripped clothes and dirt-caked skin blended with the blood of the hundreds of people he'd run past in the chaos, leaving him a shell of his former self. He'd had little time to come to grips with his new reality, however. As the screams of the dying and the howls of the monsters lit up the night sky, forcing him to begin his long journey on the road. I was taking in the sights of San Francisco when they attacked, Ben was saying now, taking Hugh out of his blood-soaked memories. I was down at Pier 39 and was looking for a place to grab some food when the sky turned black. A horde of creatures was blotting out the sun and descended on everyone around me. Screams were everywhere, and I was shocked that I wasn't amongst the dying when the attacks first happened. A woman named Kathy saved my life, Ben continued. I was dazed, but she took action. She was a soldier on leave, and she never flinched in the face of that hell. She led me to the docks and to a speedboat. She found the keys and quickly got the vehicle started, loading a few more stragglers on the boat before taking off. We nearly made it out of the city and down the coast. But the creatures took notice of our departure. Kathy took as many of them with her as she could, using a rifle she'd found in the boat's cabin to pick off the flying monsters attacking us. However, she was overwhelmed and was surrounded. She told us to jump and start swimming, and as we did, she must have lit a fuse of some sort. I don't know how, but she managed to ignite a fire and explode the boat, taking the monsters with her. I swam to shore and found myself. Well, we made it a whole hell of a lot longer than either of us should have. We couldn't have asked for anything better than that, other than for this to have all been some sort of nightmare that we could wake up from. Guess that was hoping for too much. You think this is the end? Ben asked. That's what I'm waiting for. You and I each had those things on our tail from both directions. They're going to close in on us and overwhelm our position. I'm not ready, Ben said, defeat washing over him as he slumped in his seat and took a drink of whiskey. We never are, son. This isn't an action movie, though. We aren't the heroes here. I'm not sure if there are any heroes out there working on a way to stop these things, but that horde is going to destroy this place to get to us. and I think we have no other option than to wait for our luck to run out. So what? We just give up after everything we've done to survive? No, not a chance. I'm going to take out as many of those bastards as I can. Hell, maybe our luck will hold, and we'll find a way out of this together. All I know is I'm tired, and while I'm going to go down swinging, I don't know how much strength I have left. So I gotta prepare to make that final plunge into the fray. As they drank in silence, absorbing the reality of their situation, the radio sitting on the bar kicked to life and made them both jump. A radio broadcast broke the silence filling the air. This is Avery Stevens, live from Los Angeles in an underground bunker near the coast. If you can hear me, I am using an old radio broadcasting signal to let any survivors know out there that a plan is in motion. A group of survivors is moving through the heart of this horde, carrying a massive ultrasonic bomb that will destroy the network these creatures operate on. Within a matter of minutes, the bomb will go off, and with any... Hugh and Ben looked at one another, a glimmer of hope filling their eyes for the first time since the attacks began. The sound of claws outside the walls and the screech of the horde filled the air, the electricity they produced shorting out the radio in the bar. The two men sat and looked at one another, knowing that the next few minutes would determine their ultimate fate. Well, here's to hope then, Hugh said, raising a glass of whiskey to the young man before him. Here's to hope, Ben stammered, hope and fear catching in his lungs as he lifted his glass and clinked it with Hugh's. The two men took their last drink, then slowly got up and lifted their weapons. The creatures' snarling faces began to break through the wood paneling of the building, their screeches becoming nearly deafening around them. Turning back to back as the creatures surrounded them, breaking through on all sides of the bar, Hugh and Ben took a deep breath and began the long wait for survival. Survival and hope. As you check your mail, you notice a letter that makes you stop in your tracks. Written on the front of the envelope is your full name with a heart around it. You slide your finger under the seal and rip open the envelope. You pull out the card inside and your breath stops in your throat. Written in cursive on the front, it reads, "I found you." Your head jolts up and your eyes dart from left to right, looking for movement. Before you can even open the card, you sprint back to your house and lock the door. You press your back up against the door and sit down. How had he found you? They had said that it would be next to impossible. You feel the hot tears streaming down your face. From moving across the country, leaving behind your family, changing everything all for nothing, he had found you. You slowly open the letter. You wipe the tears out of your eyes and scan the paper. The letter reads, "You thought you could hide from me, didn't you? Thought that I'd never get you back. We are meant to be together forever. I'll see you soon. From your one true love." Your breathing gets heavy, and you let the letter slip out of your hands and onto the tile below. As the paper turns in the air, you see more text on the back. "Peep, don't bother trying to leave town again. I have eyes everywhere." You slowly reach into your pocket and pull out your phone. You open your contacts to Uncle Reynolds. You let the dial tone ring, and on the other end, you hear a voice. "Hello?" Reynolds says. "He found me again. He sent a letter. He's in town. He's going to take me. He said if I try to skip town again, he'll know because he has eyes everywhere. I need help." You say, frantically, "You're going to be okay. We're going to get you out of there safe and..." Reynolds says before the line cuts out. You hear another voice come through, and just the sound of their breathing sends chills down your spine. "Hey, baby. So I'm guessing you got my letter?" He taunts. You pull your legs to your chest and bite your lip to keep from screaming. Not gonna talk to me today, huh? Well, that's unfortunate. Then I guess I'll do all the talking. Once I find you, we're going to go to a cabin up in the mountains, and that's where we'll stay. Forever, my darling. I don't quite understand why you try to run from me. I know you still love me. He chuckles, and the line picks back up to Reynolds. Are you okay? Does he have you? We're going to get you out of there. What happened? Reynolds asks. You suck a deep breath in and once again can feel the tears streaming down your face. You reiterate what occurred in the past few minutes to Reynolds, and you try to calm yourself down. You are going to be okay. Once we find him, he'll be taken into custody, and he won't be able to hurt you ever again. He said he's going to take my baby. You blurt out through your sobs. You are going to be okay. We'll be in town tomorrow morning. Just stay inside for the night and wait until we come to get you. Stay safe. Reynolds says again. He hangs up. You slowly stand up and go throughout the small house, locking all the doors and windows, and drawing the blinds so that nothing can be seen from outside. You go to the kitchen and quickly grab some snacks and scurry off to your room. No. You set up a place for you to sleep in your closet and place a baseball bat beside your pillow. You lay down and pull the blankets up to your chin and try to calm your nerves. It will all be okay in the morning. Uncle Reynolds will save you, and he'll never be able to find you again. You reassure yourself. You lock the closet door, and eventually you fall asleep. You wake up to the neighbor's rooster's loud crowing next door. You open your phone to hundreds of messages from an unknown number. They read, I love you. Good night. Good morning, love. I can't wait to see how much you've grown. They're from him. You put your hands on your stomach and sigh softly. You feel a buzz and reach for one of the granola bars you'd brought with you the night before. You slowly stand up to stretch and open the door. You walk into the kitchen and open the fridge to pull out some pasta you'd cooked a few nights ago. You place it in the microwave and start a check of the house. You squint to look out the peephole of the front door, but there's tape over it. You run back to the kitchen, grab your pasta, and hurry back to the closet. You open your phone again. It's 9:30. You hear a knock at the front door and begin to stand up. You feel relieved. Uncle Reynolds is here, and this will all be over. You'll finally get to see your parents again, and everything will go back to the way it was. Something stops you as you hear more knocking. When Uncle Reynolds came to check in on you, he always texted you that he was at the house. You open your messages with Uncle Reynolds. The last message you'd received from him had been before you moved to this town. Your heart sinks, and your blood runs cold. That's not Uncle Reynolds. You swiftly lock the door and pull the baseball bat closer to you. You open your contacts and see a voicemail from Reynolds. You turn the volume to 1 and listen to his voice. Hey, this is Uncle Reynolds, and I just wanted to say that we'll be there at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Sleep well, he states. You close the voicemail and check the time again. It's 9:33. You can feel your heart beating faster in your chest. You hear glass shattering and a voice echoing throughout the house. Come out, darling. I know you're here. Make this simple and leave your little hiding spot so we can get to the cabin quickly, he ordered. You freeze as you hear his boots stomping on the kitchen tile. You quickly message Reynolds, but the message won't go through. Your tears begin to fall onto your phone screen, and all you can think about is how you'll never see your family again. He'll take you to his cabin and you'll never be able to leave. You hear cabinet doors closing loudly in the kitchen. You try to send the message again, but the text refused to deliver. It's 9:38. The stomping of his boots seems to have gotten closer, as you hear them against the creaky floor of the bathroom near the front room. You've never been very religious, but you begin to pray as his yelling gets louder. You hear him open the door to the nursery, and his yelling calms for a moment as he opens all the drawers, nooks, and crannies of the room. You hear him right outside your bedroom door, and everything in your body is keeping you from screaming for help. You hear him trying to open the door to no avail. You hear him kicking it until finally the wood gives way and the door opens. You see the shadow of his feet in the crack under the door. You see pillows and blankets being tossed to the floor along with glass picture frames that shatter the minute they hit the ground. Glass shards fly everywhere, including under the door where they come to a stop by your feet. You hear him begin to yell and swear in frustration. You hear him walking around the room until finally he stops in front of the closet. He chuckles. "I found you, darling. Why don't you just come on out and play, huh?" You hear him begin to kick the door, trying desperately to get in. Somewhere nearby, you hear a loud commotion. "What now?" He grunts. You hear multiple pairs of boots getting closer as he continues kicking at the door. The kicking stops, and you hear multiple voices screaming and yelling. You hear a battering ram at the closet door and cover your face so splinters won't hit you. The door flies open, and light streams into the small closet. You move your hands away from your face to see a tall black man standing before you. He squats down to you and places his hand on your shoulder. "I'm Detective Adams. We have him in custody. You are okay." He smiles at you. You look behind him and see at least 15 officers around the room gathering broken items and placing them into clear plastic bags. You take his hand and he helps you to stand. Behind him is Uncle Reynolds. He pulls you against him, and you feel tears of pure joy streaming down your face as he hugs you tightly. You pull apart and see that he too is crying. We have him in the back of one of the high security vans, and he's going to be escorted to prison where he'll stay for a long time. You're safe now. You'll be able to go back home and you'll be released from witness protection. You'll no longer have to call me Uncle Reynolds. He states, "You will always be Uncle Reynolds to me. Thank you, Agent." You smile as he escorts you to his car outside. You breathe a sigh of relief as it sets in that you'll never have to see Christian again. You are free. I'm waiting for Mommy to come home fast. I can't wait for the news. I'm sitting beside the staircase on the floor with my knees folded, looking outside the door. It's hot. How long will she take? I glance at the clock in the opposite room through the open window. An hour has already passed. She must be coming from the hospital any time now. I rush to the bedroom upstairs and peer into the mirror. Hair combed? Check. Shirt tucked in? Check. Shoelaces tied? I look down. Oh, no. I don't know how to tie them. I need to look perfectly neat and clean for Mommy. I better take them off. Screesh. Honk. They've come back. I can hear the horn from Dad's car. I rush down in a hurry and almost slip on the last stair. I need to be careful. After all, I'm fragile. I stand in front of the door, jumping up and down in anticipation. Come on, Daddy. Hurry up and unlock the door. I can hear the key sliding in the lock turning. Click! Daddy has opened the door for Mommy. She smiles. At me, of course. Who else? I grin back. Be careful, sweetie, Daddy is saying to Mommy. Yes, Mommy, be careful. A great idea has come to my mind. I dash up to the bedroom, take out the pillow from the closet and set it nicely in the middle of the bed. The blanket is already in place. Daddy, bring her in now, I call out. Mommy slowly climbs the stairs, one hand on the belly which is as big as the Halloween pumpkin. She needs lots of rest and healthy food. My dad says so, and I'll make sure she gets it. Daddy lays her down. "Take care, darling." He kisses her on the cheek and leaves. I don't like this. He always leaves her alone all day. One day, I overheard Mommy talking to the neighbor lady. She said, "Daddy goes to work daily. It is important. He is in some trouble with his boss or something." I did not understand everything they were talking about. All I know is that Daddy is scary. Does he even love me? I'm very angry at him. He beat my mommy yesterday, pushed her, and she fell. She was crying. Daddy didn't come back all night. I cuddled up with Mommy in the blanket and gave her a kiss and sang the lullaby which she sometimes sings for me. She slept after a while, and I did too. But thankfully Daddy is in a good mood today. He took Mommy to the doctor, who says that Mommy would give birth in 4 months. I can't wait, and it's growing hotter day by day. I feel cooped up and closed. I'm going to the balcony for some fresh air with Mommy. She's singing a beautiful song. I like it. I feel like kicking and playing. Oh. Why say, I'll wait, shall no, hurry. Such a happy song. I'll make sure to let her know. Rita, Daddy's calling Mommy from the bedroom. I reply for her. Coming, Daddy. We were watching the stars. I climb up in the bed between Daddy and Mommy and close my eyes. I did not know I was so tired. I imagine playing with Mommy in the garden. There are ducks. In the pond, frog. Boy, jump. My eyes are closing. I'm going to sleep. I had a very scary dream last night. I saw Mommy got us in a car accident. Someone was driving the car and honking like mad. I was so scared. Mommy was saying the brakes, whatever they are, were not working. I died. It hurt so bad. The glass went right through my stomach. I'm so scared now. Daddy has gone out of town for a few days. I don't like it. It is strange. He told us that he was going to work, but when Mommy called his office, he wasn't there. Mommy was very angry. She called Daddy on the phone. I could hear her screaming. It scared me. I have decided that I will try to keep her happy. Mommy should eat more fruits. That is why I got up early in the morning before her and plucked fresh grapes from the vines in the garden. I put them on the bedside table. Mommy was very surprised to see them. She ate them anyway, and she was happy too. I love when she smiles and pats me and talks to me. I want to eat pizza, I've told Mommy. She is ordering it from some place called restaurant. Daddy hasn't come back yet. It has been 5 days since he went on his business. I had that dream today also. After watching television with Mommy, I slept off. I was in the same car. There were loud noises. This time, Daddy was also in the dream. He was cutting some wires from a strange machine. I don't want to remember it. It was horrible. It's so hot. It's still a week before Mommy gives birth. I can't wait. But that's not what I want to talk about. It's about these strange noises. Recently, I've started hearing strange murmuring noises. Is something wrong with my ear, I wonder? And it's extremely hot. The voices grow louder every second. I can't hear Mommy properly over all this noise. I'll make sure to get the doctor to check my ear. It's a very busy day today. Mommy's going to the hospital to give birth. She's hurting. But I tell her it is going to be okay. Of course I'll be going with her. I'm so excited I could not sleep properly last night. I've come down to the garage with Mommy. Daddy is doing something under the car. He says he's preparing the car for us. Daddy is scary, but he is also sweet. Why is it so hot and loud and tight. I feel so uncomfortable. But I'm not letting her go alone with the neighbor lady. Daddy cannot come. He says he has to do something important. Take care, honey, he is saying to Mommy. Bye, Daddy. I wave. He's waving back and smiling. Daddy can smile. I'm so happy. I was very worried that something was wrong with him. I thought he did not know how to smile. Oh, these noises are hurting my ears. I want to cry. I think I fell asleep in the car. I'm back at my house in the bedroom. I think neighbor lady carried me here. It started cooling a little bit, but the noises are even louder. Where's Mommy? I can't see her. Oh yes, she was in the hospital. How can I forget? I rush down to the main door. It's extremely cold now. Why am I tired? And my belly is hurting. Badly. Just like in my dream. By the way, I saw that dream again. I'm sitting beside the staircase on the floor with my knees folded, looking outside the door. I'm again waiting. I'm waiting for Mommy and Daddy to come home. I'm waiting to meet her soon, kiss her soon, hug her soon. I'm waiting to be born. The house has an articulated skeleton, shifting forward one story at a time, the attic forever interrogating the front steps. It leers with its cyclops eye, a round window reflecting the rippling grass, the cottonwoods, and a woman in a battered raincoat book, ended by 2 stolen duffel bags. Purple? Probably the reflected character in the window is a little too close to looking in a mirror, front and center on everyone's most hated trope list. The support beams are long pale rib bones forming a cavernous porch. The door is a rectangular shadow. A mouth metaphor would be a bit obvious, but as I cross the threshold, I relish the feeling of being swallowed. I take my notebook out of my raincoat pocket and scribble. The house has an articulated skeleton. Kind of a boring verb has. I flip it closed, the title on the cover reinforcing the notion that my words are still relatively cheap. Not bad, not good, but maybe something one day. The title started the fight. I'd been getting dressed. We'd lived together for so long, flashes of skin while changing were as interesting as plain oatmeal for breakfast. From the kitchen, Oliver read it out loud to me, laughed, and said I should turn it into a t-shirt for myself. It had struck a nerve. Not because it was me. Not because I didn't think it was true. In fact, he was probably right. Naturally, I broke his guitar, smashed it to bits on the hardwood floor. Then I hightailed it to Anna's couch. She was dashing off to her gloomy timeshare in the Midwest in a week and offered me a job house sitting. Then she got sick and decided she'd give it to me for the next 2 months. She says it's mono, but I suspect I'm the recipient of a pity vacation. She always knew how much I envied her, drooling over the Instagram account in times of procrastination. I close my eyes. I can't let my first in-person impression of this magnificent oddity be marred by possibly true, but negative thoughts. I straighten my own articulated skeleton and venture further in, pretending I own the place, pretending I too am a real writer. I twirl and bow to the pewter chandelier hanging over the foot of the stairs with its foot-long candlesticks dripping over the holders. I jump and break off a piece of wax, give it a good sniff, then let it meld with the junkyard of detritus in the bottom of my pocket. What? I skip toward the collection of odd mirrors, each one added by a member of the timeshare group. They slice me into bits and pieces as I wander down the corridor to the kitchen. Even the molding is gorgeous and strange, tiny screaming faces all in a row in the style of Greek theater masks. I pop my fingertip into one of their mouths. The depression is deeper than I expected. I get my finger in up to my second knuckle before I hit the back of their tiny throats, so deep they must extend behind the wall. The kitchen is less ornate, whitewashed, simple. I stock the fridge with my gas station haul, pulling the antique lever and stuffing it all inside, dry goods right along with the drinks and microwavable sandwiches. I think twice, pull the lever again, and take out a bag of pizza-flavored combos. I fully expect to stumble out of here at summer's end 15 pounds heavier and bedazzled in junk food acne. The table is vast, a chair on each end and a bench on either side that could hold at least 4 people. The surface could hold so much more. I imagine all my creamy pages splayed over the tabletop and grip the strap of the duffel. I've always had a weakness for kitchen tables over desks or couches, beds or even coffee shops. It annoyed Oliver, who liked to cook and was constantly cleaning my notebooks, reference materials, and laptop away so he could have a clear surface to work. On my birthday, he'd made me homemade pasta. He didn't even use a machine. He still bragged about it, right up to the point I left. I tear into the bag of combos, crunching so fiercely my jaw grows sore, and guzzle a 20-ounce bottle of grape soda until my teeth ache. I grip the empty bottle until the plastic crunches in my fist. I have the whole beautiful house I daydreamed about the entire drive. It would be wasteful to spend most of my time in the one uninteresting room. I will not be seduced by the likes of you. I yell. The table remains where it is, impassive, mute. I cringe at my urge to personify every goddamn thing. I need to get out of here. Once I do, the table's siren song will be broken. I drag the duffel bags one at a time up the stairs. All my worldly possessions. They're huge and unwieldy. Army surplus, thudding against each carpeted step. I lay the book bag and the clothes bag out at the foot of the 4-poster, fondling the heavy purple velvet curtains. They're musty and dank, the perfume of old books. They must be hiding somewhere. I bend over and lift the bed skirt. 3 fully stocked bookshelves line the frame. Another seduction. Work now, read later. Work now, read later. The mantra that had helped me finally finish a draft. Instead of succumbing to temptation, I unzip the body bag duffel and lift the dead on arrival manuscript from the depths. Time to liven you up. I unfold its shroud. The first page is blank. I haven't come up with a title yet, and I'm not proud enough to put my name on it either. I flip the page, ready to face the truth of my own inadequacies. I immediately strike through the first paragraph. It might have been good once, but I've seen it so many times opening my document. It makes me gag. At 100 pages in, I stop and try to take stock of something I like so I can keep going. In the maybe something someday notebook, I write Ophelia in cursive, embellishing it with vines and ivy leaves. I'm thankful each and every day that she's my main character. Ophelia, the only reason I finished the draft. Light-footed, lavender-scented, quick-thinking Ophelia. Burdened by intrusive thoughts and maintenance bills for her crumbling inheritance, a house not entirely, but very much inspired by the timeshare. She walks her Komodo dragon through an equally crumbling neighborhood, completely oblivious to her impending doom. Ophelia, forever surprising me, skipping over my neat little plot points, like stepping stones in a river, missing some entirely. Splashing off to wade into the biting cold of the unknown. Killing her was the hardest thing I've ever done. Was it because I couldn't control her? A last-ditch effort to fix her in place at last. I close the notebook and pick up the pages. A storm blows in, wind and rain on the window. The plink of hail pulls me out of the story for the first time in the middle of the witching hour. It's late, but there's no way I'm sleeping through the storm, so might as well keep going. I find coffee in the pantry. The creaking and settling of the house intensifies under the torrent, making me twitch. I take the mug and patter back to the stairs. I never turn lights on at night in liminal spaces, preferring to stumble around blindly rather than disturb the darkness. When I walk by the mirror, collection on my way to the stairs, my face distorts from glass to glass. I gaze with dilated pupils at each of my demonesque faces, maiden, mother, and crone twisted around shadowy lesions. I list by the last mirror and wobble back on my heel. It was dark, but there was no mistaking it. The shapes are all wrong. A halo of curls, turning on a neck to reveal a familiar face. Not my own. The shadows are much more forgiving. The face as beautiful as it is in daylight. Ophelia. She nods. I wrench the mirror off the wall, nail and all. Closer. She wiggles her finger. I'm almost flesh with the glass when she whispers, "I love you too." Her face jerks up and then drops out of the frame. My own face behind her. She's gone before I can ask her to wait. At 6 in the morning, I finish the first read through. It's clear now what an idiot I'd been. Ophelia hadn't had to die. Nothing in the plot had pointed to it. It was indulgent, a tragic ending that I'd created to make my work. What? Profound? I crumple the offending pages and burn them in the fireplace in the library living room. The storm has passed, but the rain continues. I sweat in front of the flames. What was next? I had to rewrite the ending. But what was it? And where was it hiding? When the rooms lighten, I ramble through them, asking the unusual wallpaper pattern if I was a sadist, and the antique lighting fixture what my ending should be, and getting no reply. I eat at the kitchen table. The manuscript lies on the table at the opposite sitting area. It's been 24 hours and all I've done is cut its leg off. It sits, it judges. I finish my sour gummy worms and hot pocket in the library living room and take one of the books down. It's an arc about a woman who forgets her last name, who is menaced by a killer umbrella. At first, when I open it, I just suspect it has a few extra end pages, but each one is as blank as the last. I grab another, Killer Mermaids. Blank. Bite. The Shelf and a half of Tolkien. Blank Art Boy. Gaiman blank, Shakespeare plays. Blank, Miss Marple blank, Anna's breakout romance novel. At the height of the vampire craze, all of them, blank, wipe. One at a time, I place them all back in their homes. It's easier to pretend this isn't happening when the evidence is neatly hidden again. I get my phone out of the bedroom and try the front door. It's unlocked, but it doesn't budge. A seam of wood in the cracks. It rains. The house creaks. I try the windows and other doors with the same result and make my way back to my starting point. I press my back against the door and slide down it, dialing Anna, one hand over my eyes as I wait for her to answer. "What's up?" Her voice crackles with static. "The house is haunted." "Well, duh. That's why we bought it. It's trapped me in." "Oh, that's the most suspicious I've heard in my life." "Spill now. I'm losing my mind. I'm talking to home decor." "Don't worry. It's done something like this before, with Max. After his mother died." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want you spooking yourself. And honestly, I thought you were over Oliver. It shouldn't have any ammunition like it did with Max." "I'm not upset about Max. He was kind of a tool." She says, but it comes out he, kinda ool. "Yeah, I know." I stomp my foot like a petulant child. Embarrassment makes me angrier, but I bite it back. "I'm sorry I'm stupid. This is so stupid." It'll be all right. It's not malevolent." "What isn't malevolent about trapping someone?" "Well, not much. Max said it was treating him like an author treats a character. It was heaping trouble on him, trying to tell him something." Static hisses through her last word. Tell him what? He wouldn't say. Okay. I'm gasping for air. My lungs feel over and underinflated at the same time. Just calm down. I'll stay. Anna. Silence. Anna? The screen confirms a dropped call. I go limp for a while, trying to find an equilibrium I'm not sure exists. Through my fingers, I spy the mirror wall, a patch of lighter wallpaper, diamond-shaped. The mirror is gone. Too afraid to sit still, I wander the house searching for it, waiting for a rug to trip me up or the lights to flicker. But things stay relatively calm. I check the books again, still blank. The ones in my duffel, too. If you're going to trap me, you could at least let me have some reading material. The house remains infuriatingly silent. I check the fridge and all the cabinets. The manuscript watches me. I bump my hip on the corner of the table, and the blank top sheet sails off the table and whisks over the floor, the corner slipping under the cellar door. I unlock the door, stepping over the top sheet and pulling the chain. Nothing much here. Some canned goods and cleaning supplies. An unfinished white blouse hangs on a dress form with only one sleeve and a pattern of cherries. Dust, spiders. I find it in the darkest corner. It's cracked, with a little diamond-shaped piece on the floor beside it, a scrap of the cherry cloth underneath. I cut myself on the shard, putting it back in place, a red fingerprint on the glass. I suck my finger and walk through lavender-scented dust motes to the slanted door. With a shove of my shoulder, the door opens, banging on its hinges. It's still raining, but a shade tree shelters me from the worst of it. I try my phone. Lydia, are you all right? How long did you know? Know what? That I liked women too. Thank God. She sighs, coughs deeply, dryly. Maybe she really wasn't lying about being sick. Dishes clatter. Pay wine. Oh no. I never knew, you know. But there were clues. Clues. Like when I first met you at Max's party. You were drunk and told me my hair was like a North Carolina sunset. You gross. It wasn't your best. You could do way better now. With pickup lines or similes. Similes. That other stuff, you're still a disaster. I mean, I've seen you at book club. And the grocery store. She pauses, probably sipping tea to soothe her throat. And the library, and the park, and that time with the repair woman, that was awe-inspiring, really. Okay, I get it. Most kids in high school spent their summers at the pool or on vacation, but I preferred to spend mine in a library. Mind you, this wasn't just any library. This was a good old-fashioned card catalog, extravaganza of county birth recordings, cemetery records, drawers of family archives, and an unholy number of biographies on Abe Lincoln. It smelled of must and brewing coffee, and the ceiling creaked like a ghost was moving in the attic. I loved it. It was there that I first encountered Cyril Aberforce. Years after the fact, I wondered if I remembered his name because it was so strange, but likely not. It had more to do with the words, "murderer convicted," over his head in bold newspaper print. In April of 1838, this Mr. Cyril Aberforce was found in a pool of his wife's blood in their kitchen, a butcher knife still in his hand. His wife, Maggie, was Mr. Aberforce's only relative in hundreds of miles. They had no children, nor were likely to, being in their 60s. The fragile, yellowed newspapers read that it was the result of a drunken rage. For the man was prone to take moonshine in his bad harvest seasons, and the rain hadn't shown many signs of coming, so maybe he was planning ahead. Other chronicles said a demon had come over him as punishment for his past sins. Unfortunately, I couldn't precisely discover what these past sins were. That was understandable given that 60 years of not the best recorded history had preceded the murder. but I couldn't help but question it all. I was reading a lot of romances at the time. Austen, Gaskell, Heyer, and I couldn't believe a man would murder his wife. And of course, there was the fact that Cyril swore he didn't kill her. He said he'd come in and found her lying in her own blood and was so upset he took the knife and laid beside her until one of the farmhands found him. I was still considering all of this on the drive home when a sudden thought struck me. I turned my mom's car around and drove to the largest house in the town, owned by the brittle, tight-fisted Julia Erford. I knocked for nearly 10 minutes before the door was opened. The ancient creature herself answered, more than making up for her 4 feet 7 inches, with a stare like an iceberg and a voice as shrill as a crow. She wasn't happy to see me, and I doubted she would have been happy to see anyone. But when I asked if I could look through her collections of old papers, her eyes lit up. Mrs. Erford had long since hoarded a collection of letters and other documents from her family, who had lived in the town for nearly 200 years. She refused to give them up to the museum, saying those greedy Democrat monsters would photocopy them to high hell and sell them to the highest bidder. I let all this pass without comment, and the only account of myself I had to give was that I indeed was not what she considered the most deplorable of occupations, an academic, but merely a teenager interested in the past. Mrs. Erford's study, where she kept all of the papers, might as well have been the library, as it smelled just the same. Still, an hour in I was missing the tidy card catalog as I sat beside mountains of deteriorating parchment. I heard the click of her cane down the hall outside and she opened the door. "Find what you were looking for?" "No, unfortunately not." "Might I ask what was so important that you threw off my dinner time?" I looked up guiltily. "I wanted to find out more about the Aberforce murder." Ah, nasty business. My family preferred not to talk about it. Cocking my head, I asked, "Why's that?" She looked down at me like I was an idiot. "Because the Aberforces were my relatives. Erford is a derivative we took after the Civil War so people would stop banging on the door, asking to see where Maggie died." My eyes widened. "Maggie died here? Are you quite sure you've read about this?" "My family has owned these 35 acres since John Aberforce laid his claim in 1805. He was Cyril's father, you know. The house was always in the same place." "But Maggie didn't actually die in this house?" "I saw the cornerstone on my way up the porch. It said 1847. Mrs. Erford sized me up, new respect in her eyes. "Yes, so it was." "No, she died in the original farmhouse. It burned down, and my great-great-great-great-grandfather built this mansion." For a moment, I was caught off guard, wanting to laugh at the thought that maybe there weren't so many greets in between then and Mrs. Erford. But I controlled myself. "So the line's been continuous since then?" She puffed out her chest a bit. "It has." "Wait," I said, holding up one finger. "How's that?" "The paper said Cyril had no family, not even children. Did a family member come from somewhere else and take up the line?" Mrs. Erford hesitated. I could tell she was reconsidering the wisdom of letting me into her home. "Well, yes and no," she said at last. "My ancestor, Henriette Aberforce, came with her husband and son, but they also came for another reason." "Which was?" She sighed resignedly. "To care for Cyril's child." "But you said—" "Oh, child, how old are you, 18? She snapped. "A man doesn't have to be married to a woman to impregnate her." I rolled my eyes. "You might have just said so, but that still doesn't add up. Why wouldn't the papers have given a clue to that as a motive?" "Who was the child's mother?" 20-year-old Beth Smith, a charity orphan turned nurse who'd come to take care of Mrs. Aberforce in her sickness. The baby wasn't born until after Cyril had been hanged. I cringed. That's disgusting. She was young enough to have been his daughter. Men are men, Mrs. Erford said with a saturnine smile. Now, I expect you're going to be wanting the letters of Henrietta Aberforce. How would those help? How should I know? You're the one playing detective, making free with my family's history. It's history in general, Mrs. Erford, I argued. And I didn't ask for your opinion. Now, do you want the letters or not? Not 10 minutes later, I was sitting at the study desk, unwrapping the dusty bundle. Lacking the latex gloves of the library, I had to be especially careful opening and turning pages. Making out the spidery feminine script of the mid-19th century was nearly impossible. I was on my 20-something letter, nearly about to pack up and leave, when I caught sight of the date at the top, April 13th, 1838. Not only was it the day of the murder, the letter was addressed to Maggie. Though most was of no importance, a passage caught my eye. What nonsense you are talking. You certainly are no longer in the prime of life, but I will not hear of you speaking of your death in this way. And stop saying Cyril will not miss you when you've gone, for I'm certain no husband could be more devoted to his wife. Did he not engage a village girl to look after you in your ill health? I look forward to meeting her. Anyone who looks after my dear relative so well is worthy of the highest respect. You may expect me only a few weeks from the time you get this letter. I looked up as the letter returned to domestic inanities. Maggie had known she was going to die. Did she know her husband had been chasing another girl? Had Beth or Cyril killed her to get her out of the way? Did you find anything interesting? Mrs. Erford's voice startled me out of my morbid reflections. Yes, I said excitedly, repeating to her the passage and my thoughts on it. I wonder if the answer lies in Maggie's diary. She kept a diary? I asked, barely concealing my joy. Supposedly, she said. No one could find it. If they had, no doubt it would have been key evidence in the trial. But my cousin Hetty's journal of the goings-on at that fiasco bears no mention of it. And before you ask, I've read them and there's no mention of Beth Smith. I don't think they wanted the scandal. And Hetty's letters show she didn't know the child was Cyril's until it was a few years old. After that, she took it in as her own when Beth died. So the baby wasn't used as motivation for the murder. Then what was? Mrs. Erford scoffed. The story from the trial was that he had become violent from too much to drink and lost his head. So he took a butcher knife to his wife? I asked incredulously. I don't care how drunk a person gets. That makes no sense. Well, I don't see how you can work it out now. The thing happened almost 200 years ago. I know. It just bothers me. He swore his innocence. Yes, she agreed, pushing up her wire glasses. His innocence was always taken as gospel in this house. But that was because Beth's child, my ancestor David, said his mother knew he was innocent. But did Maggie know about Beth's pregnancy? I asked, my mind working it fast. Even if the court didn't know, she might have, and someone killed her to keep her quiet. You think it was Beth? Mrs. Erford asked, pursing her lips. That's who my money is on. If only I could find that diary. Good luck with that. None of the original buildings remain, save the old outhouse. Why is that? Mrs. Erford laughed, a harsh grating sound. It was the only building that greedy historical society could get the paperwork for before it was demolished. Everything else is gone. Could I look around there? I asked hopefully. The old woman stopped laughing and eyed me curiously. I've never seen a child so interested in the past. It just doesn't sit well with me. A man murdering his wife or being hung for something he didn't do. Hanged, Mrs. Erford corrected me. Well, I suppose you can take a look at the outhouse, but not tonight. Come tomorrow morning. I'm sorry. I was up bright and early the next day, barely pausing to grab breakfast before jumping in my car and starting for town. Before going to the Erford mansion, I briefly stopped at the library to check a hunch and, being right, arrived at the house ready to go. The rains weren't bad in 1838. I practically shouted as the front door opened. What the? Mrs. Erford scowled at me. Cyril had been a farmer all his life, I went on buoyantly. He would have known what the signs for a good season were. He couldn't have been drinking because of that. Do you know how old I am? Do you want to give me a heart attack? I grinned, wanting to suggest that I didn't see her dying of something so pathetic. But I merely apologized and let her lead me through the house and to the backyard. The grounds consisted of a swimming pool, covered despite the season, and large gardens, overgrown from lack of care. The outhouse was precisely what I expected, a molding shack surrounded by weeds. The door creaked as it gave way to my determined pull, throwing light into the putrid square of blackness. Ugh, it stinks like bad water, I said, realizing the obviousness of the statement too late. Maybe I overestimated your intelligence, Mrs. Erford said flatly, also wheezing a little from the smell. I'll be in the house. Don't bother me. I looked around the exterior of the little shack, checking for anything strange on the walls. Then I went inside, covering my face with the collar of my shirt and using my phone's flashlight to look at the interior. The only other option seemed to be digging. Finding a shovel wasn't hard, and I quickly took to the task, grateful that my early start was allowing me to beat the heat of the day. The soil smelled worse the deeper I went, and I tried not to think about what gases and other things had been released in hundreds of years from human excrement. Some time passed, and I was just regretting my decision to turn down going with a friend to the movies when the shovel hit something solid. Forgetting the smell for the moment, I knelt down and reached into the 2-foot-deep hole. A flat, smooth surface greeted my palm. I quickly dug around it and felt it to be some kind of box. Thankfully, lifting it out was not difficult, as it was about the size of a shoebox and not heavy. I used water from a hose to clean away the filth and found a large maw was carved into the top. Unfortunately, the box was locked, and no amount of years had harmed its integrity. Despite her apparent indifference, Mrs. Erford's eyes lit up when she saw the strong box in my arms, and she patted away, saying she needed to get something. She came back with an ancient ring of keys. These have been passed to each head of the Erford family for generations, she said, handing it to me. Try them out. We sat in what she called the breakfast parlor, methodically sticking each of the 50 or so keys into the lock. On the 28th, it clicked, slowly, reluctantly, but it clicked, and the lid lifted. Within was a single sheaf of papers, bound with a leather sleeve and cord. This, too, had an AMA inscribed. My instincts made me go to the last page, dated the same day as the murder. Perhaps it was my excitement, perhaps because my eyes had become acclimated to old-time cursive, but whatever it was, I made out the entry in a few seconds. My eyes widened. What does it say? Mrs. Erford asked nervously. Does she guess at her killer? I shook my head, but she knew about the baby. I nodded, and she knew who her killer would be. Who? Mrs. Erford's knuckles were white on the table. Herself, I breathed. The old woman blinked uncomprehendingly. Maggie Aberforth killed herself, I explained. She says here, I've planned it tonight as that little slut will be gone, so Cyril will take the blame. When he's hanged, hopefully the shock kills his Bathsheba and her spawn of the devil. I leaned back in my chair and took a deep breath. What a psycho! A silence descended for a minute as we each pondered this revelation. Then Mrs. Erford, who had been so tense before hearing the truth, stood up and said in a calm voice, "I don't know. The Eberforce and Erford women have been doing things to protect the family name for centuries. But this was so evil." I cried, aghast at her rationalization. "You would never do something like this." The old woman smiled and shrugged, saying nothing more. "You are late. You are late for work. You are always late for everything. You wait for your dreams to choose you instead of chasing them. You're late, and you smack the alarm clock for constantly reminding. You sit up in your bed, and the reflection of your mirror frazzles you for a while. The bedhead look was one you can never pull. Quickly, you change into a dress shirt and trousers. Taking a shower this morning was out of the question. It was even later than usual. You make your way to the kitchen and prepare a quick sandwich, deciding to eat it while the teapot boils. Wait, you forgot to brush your teeth. While sprinting up the stairs, the teapot gives a piercing ring, signaling it's finished. Once you finish brushing your teeth, washing your face, you glance at the mirror and return it with a gasp. Your hair is still a mess. Tired, you comb through it with your fingers while walking back down the stairs. Before leaving the house, you grab the navy blue blazer from the entryway closet, tea mug in one hand, suitcase in the other, and loafers guiding your feet. You take a deep breath of the fresh air outside as you lock the door. Looking at the bright sky, you felt a little more comfortable in your unpunctuality. Even the loved sun could be, and especially was late. After an intense walk uphill, you arrive at the Shibuya station. The Toyoko line will arrive in 15 minutes. It seems it's running late. Due to this, you sit down on a bench and wait. You pull your usual red delicious snack out of your bag. You feel someone's lingering eyes over your shoulder. They belong to a homeless man, a man you haven't noticed until now. You don't feel remorse, chomping on the apple in front of the man. He is merely another human being, a being you'd quickly become if you keep running overly late. A chubby woman wanders by the bench. "Pig," the homeless man instantly says under his breath. That's rather rude of him, you think in your head. Then a healthy-appearing man in a business suit carrying a briefcase passes by the bench. "Human," the homeless man mumbles this time. You silently chuckle. He's just crazy, you think. Why am I even giving him the time of day? It isn't like I have much time left for myself anyways. The train arrives. After an hour commute, you get off at Yokohama to start another day at the office, end the 9-to-5 shift, and come back home the same way you came. In the evening, after watching hours of TV and drinking beer, you take a long-deserved shower. Before you rest, you take a light snack and curl up in bed. You remember the homeless man. You hadn't noticed him on the way back, though. No, I'm not wasting my sleep time on him, you think. That's one time I surely don't like to waste. But something keeps making you think of him. Something mystic. Whatever it is, these thoughts enable you to doze off, leaving gaping holes in your dreams. The next morning is yet again a late one, but this time it's early enough to squeeze in a shower. Everything else about your morning routine is the same. Slamming the alarm clock, unbrushed hair, strolling uphill to the station. Once you reach the station, you crave an apple until you see the same homeless man parked on the bench. Sternly, you sit down and scowl at him while he watches a group of commuters. There's a short man, a young boy, and an old lady. Milk, pizza, cookie. The homeless man cites as they roam. Although it seems like a recipe for disaster, at least it's not rude, you think. The healthy man from yesterday struts by. Human. The homeless man whispers in exchange. Maybe he's stating the obvious. But then what does pizza mean? You finish the apple to its core in a flash. Typically, you'd save it in your bag to throw in compost later. Yet you toss it in the trash can by the bench, tired of the fruit flies' growing population following it. Apple, the homeless man immediately says and repeats it once more as you pass by him. That's unusual. He hardly repeats the same two nicknames. Why hasn't he given me one the other countless occasions I pass him? Surely this is the first time you have passed him with an apple. But no one else had the food physically on them. It's instead what you have just eaten, like the young boy whose chin told of a sauce stain, particularly pizza. It makes sense now how the chubby man is the pig, the short man is milk, the old woman is cookie, and May, apple. There's someone you are forgetting. Someone from yesterday. Yes, the businessman. The human. Suddenly you are stricken with terror at the thought. Across the bench, the businessman is swooping by. Human. The homeless man mumbles again. Human stares at you, as if looking into your soul, the one thing he probably can't devour. Sweat starts to form wherever it can on your surface. Your body tremors uncontrollably. Similar to boiling noodles, your limbs feel boneless now. If the homeless man's right, you cannot let him escape. With all your strength, you fasten your knees, rise from the bench, and walk to the curb he's standing at. He doesn't notice your presence, even with his train running late. Without much assistance, your body seizes the train that comes. You cannot bother to check what bus you are on or what stops lead. Still, you stand, barely breathing, 2 meters away from human. Not after long, human pushes a button, letting you know his stop is soon. You near the doorway and get off with him. As soon as you get off, you kneel and pretend to tie your laceless shoes to create some distance. You follow him out the station and to a nearby neighborhood, all at a 10-meter distance. You have no idea what you are looking for or what you are going to do once you find it. But there is something worth discovering. For around 10 more minutes, you trail the man on foot, doubting the mission. I look like a crazy person stalking this perfectly regular man. Unexpectedly, the man takes a hard right and you jog a little to catch up. It was a dead-end street with only one house on the block. He takes a glance over his shoulder. Spontaneously, you swerve, face a random parked car, pull out your home key from your pocket, and grab at the door handles out of frustration. Surprisingly, your act was convincing enough because the man enters his house with ease. You run to the side of his house, but there isn't a clear view of inside. You decide to go to the backyard. The area is unfenced, surrounded by trees, bearing a forest. From the back door, there's a clear view of the kitchen. You peek in from the bottom of the deck, beneath the wide steps. Human drops his briefcase and grabs a beer from the fridge. He seems normal to me minus this Victorian-style house, but he's certainly not a cannibal. You are about to leave from your awkward position when you witness him open the freezer. Within, a human head seats among body parts. Perspiration develops across your body again. Before your limbs go weak, you try to call the police. Then who will believe my story? That a psychic homeless man told me the man eats human flesh. You hear a voice call out. It's the man. You sprint into the forest. The man even faster tackles you to the floor. With unwavering eyes, he chokes you. Your environment starts to vanish as air does. At the corner of your eye, a thick branch comes into view. Almost automatically, it ends up in your hand and penetrates his neck. Human finally releases his hands and drops with a thud. In fits of breath, you come back to reality. Now, You check the man's quiet pulse as his eyes dilate. He's dead. In complete, utter silence, you drag his lifeless body through his backyard to his kitchen. You know what you have to do. Use his weapons to decapitate his body. You can't leave evidence. You can't be known as a murderer. You are simply an unpunctual person. Once executed, you throw his arm on a skillet and fry it. He deserves to die the way he lived. You finish as much of the meal as you can and squeeze the leftovers in the freezer. You clean the place with baking soda. You forget your clothes are painted in blood. You walk up the stairs, throw the clothes in the laundry, and go to his bedroom. Change into a t-shirt, trousers, and a navy blue blazer. The house was now as spotless as it was before. You leave the house and make way to the station with your suitcase in hand. Your appearance at the office is overdue more than natural. You call in sick as you get on the train back to the Shibuya station. Your coworkers thought something incredibly horrid happened to you, but you reassure them nothing too out of the ordinary occurred. As soon as you depart the train, you notice a person sitting on the bench next to the homeless man. "Human," the homeless man says as you pass by. You glare at the man beside him, and he reciprocates, hardly breaking eye contact. You get out of the station and glide throughout the downhill walk to your house. Once you enter, you release the immense weight of the day. Your stomach growls, so you take a piece of human's arm from your briefcase and nibble at it. You feel like a changed person. No longer is the tardy you alive. You desire to be early, or even on time. Now sleep in human safe clothing instead of changing tomorrow morning. Peacefully sleep. Now you've become early, the early bird that gets the worm. You are a cannibal. You are a murderer. Now, you are human. Harrowing nights low on food left my men at the end of their rope, earnest in all my intentions. But I know rationing the food is what made my men succumb to the depths. "Leviathan, hold strong," I prayed. "Hold until I can get them back home. Hold until these torrential rains stop. Hold until I can buy them another pint." Prayers mean nothing to the sea. Minutes felt like hours, and my eyes burned from the salty waters. Everything still felt like it would be fine. It wasn't our first storm, and I'd like to hope that some men slept through it. Panic didn't set in until I saw the cliffside. Locked on her trajectory, my champion Leviathan was doomed to be dashed upon those stones. Even though I shouted at the top of my lungs, I can't say that everyone heard my warning. Abandon ship. For Latskuta. For Lat. Seconds later, the impact threw me forward, and more pungent brine filled my mouth. Even after this, ever present, was my foolishness. The shoals embraced me like the loving arms of a companion I left at home. Heed my warning when I say you will never be prepared for the sinking of a ship. Even if you hold your breath, it'll flee from your lungs after hitting the frigid and bitter water. You'll be nothing more than a hapless babe floating in the current. Luckily, God must have taken pity on me, for I don't remember much of my time under the water, nor do I remember washing up ashore. The thunderous storm was a distant rumbling in my ears now, as I stared up at a flat gray sky. It wasn't much to look at, the island itself. I couldn't see it during the storm, but atop the cliffside that shattered my vessel, there was a lighthouse. Grimacing from the pain of my aching body and burning lungs, I began my haphazard stumble up to the lighthouse. Hefting my weight across the island proved to be tedious with my injured leg. The door was ajar when I reached the top, and when I called, nobody answered. How such a building had been left so unkempt made the pit of my stomach boil. The fate of the Leviathan, and my men could have been kinder had there been someone here. Our vessel could not have been the first to wander precariously close to the island, and I wonder how many other men were left in my position due to this discarded responsibility. Under the furniture, or behind picture frames, were the only places not caked in thick layers of dust, and emerald rust flowered over anything metal. Something wasn't right. Even if the lighthouse was decommissioned, they wouldn't leave personal effects scattered around, and there wouldn't still be cans of food in the pantry. Knots formed in my stomach when I heard a moan. Not caring who lay in the room, just wanting there to be someone else, I hobbled as fast as my broken leg would allow. Overjoyed as I was at first to see Thomas, the youngest member of my crew, he was splayed over a moldy couch and looked unwell. Weak and with labored breathing, I knew the boy wouldn't have lasted long here. Stairs presented another challenge for me, and I hauled myself up to the next floor, hoping for a better bearing of the situation at hand. My nose was assaulted with a putrid and sour scent. There lay on the second floor a man who I assumed to be the former keeper, swathed in the light of the window. He lay entirely still. Yanking myself back down the stairs in horror, I dared not tell Thomas what I saw. I stayed by his side, and when he awoke, he yammered all night, but didn't make it to the morn. Suitable grave sites were in short supply on the island, and I did my best with what I could to give Thomas a dignified resting place. I didn't venture upstairs again until I could no longer bear to see the keeper's still visage through the floorboards. I didn't know the man, but I had hoped his family could forgive me for the way I cast away his remains. Never once did I consider myself blessed to be alive, and especially not now that I was left alone with few supplies. A long time ago, when I was a little boy, my Moor told me a tale of a fisherman who overestimated his craft and lost most of his family to the sea. Never did I think myself to be like foolish Elias, chased by the Draug. Draugs and stories of the undead men scared me under the covers as a child, but sitting alone all day in a damp and rusty lighthouse had brought the nightmares back to me. Where there was a slight creak, or the knocking of the door, I could picture him, the old keeper, banging on it with what was left of his hands. But he was the least of my concerns. Ocean water, digged hole. Nasty stuff, but it was my only other option when there was no rainwater. Thomas disappeared. I would often find myself visiting his grave and talking to him, but one evening I found that the soil was perturbed and Thomas gone. Later that night I awoke, and I could hear his haggard breathing over me. I dare not look upon his face, lest I provoke. Echoes came from the main tower stairway up to the light. Perhaps it was the keeper, not knowing his service was done long ago. When mist blanketed the island, I could see faces in the fog, and I could hear my men's gargled calls for me. Then leaving the lighthouse became blasphemy, and the only instigator for my wretched husk's movement was the rain. Mustering any kind of strength now felt absurd, as I found myself looking more and more like the keeper as the days grew on. Existence was miserable in this new home of mine, and I found myself spending a good amount of time questioning what really killed the old keeper. Loathe is a kind word compared to how I felt about this place. Escaping had occurred to me, but there were too many dangers lying out on the sea. I could have tried lighting the lamp at the top, but there was no whale oil to be found, and I knew the Draug was guarding the tower. As I went to sleep, I could hear them all laughing at me. The captain who killed his men, the captain who crashed his ship, the captain who would not let Thomas suffer another day on this cursed island. Venligst, I begged the island, please, please let me leave. Every night it does not answer me, and as the days stretch with not a single ship sighting, I know I do not wait for rescue, I wait for my judgment. Hear my Barnabarn, my Moor would say, comforting me in her lap. Every tale has beginning and a choice, right or wrong. Even though you are a very smart boy, remember to always look back at the beginning and try your best to make the right choice.